the most feared dragon slayer in history, was raised by a dragon. Every dragon across the mountains knew his name, not because he hated them, but because he knew them better than any human alive. And the reason for that began with a single broken egg in the snow. Many years before the war, a lone dragon circled high above the frozen mountains. He was ancient, scarred from battles with hunters, and alone. Dragons rarely trusted humans. But that winter night, something strange caught his attention. A tiny shape lying in the snow. A human child, abandoned. The dragon could have flown away, but something inside him refused to leave. So he landed beside the child, and for 3 long nights, he shielded the boy from the storm with his wings. The boy survived, and as the seasons passed, the impossible happened. The dragon raised him, he guarded the cave while the boy slept, and slowly, the boy learned to understand the language of dragons. The dragon named him Erin. To the dragon, the boy was family. To the boy, the dragon was the only parent he had ever known. But humans never stay away from power forever. Years later, hunters began returning to the mountains. One day, a group of soldiers discovered Erin near the mountain trails. They were shocked. A human living among dragons. They brought him to the capital. And when the king learned that Erin understood dragons, he saw an opportunity. The king offered Erin a choice: serve the kingdom or be treated as a traitor. Erin believed he could protect dragons from the inside. Erin became the greatest dragon tracker the kingdom had ever known, because he knew exactly where they lived and how they fought. Eventually, Erin returned to the mountain where he had grown up. The cave was still there, but it felt different. Silent, empty. Then a massive shadow passed over the cliffs. The dragon who had raised him had returned. Older, weaker, the dragon looked at the human he had protected as a child, and for the first time, Erin lowered his weapon. The soldiers behind him waited for the command. One order, and the hunters would attack. Erin looked at the dragon. Memories flooded back. The storm, the warmth of those wings, and in that moment, Erin made a decision. He dropped his sword. The hunters were furious. The king declared him a traitor. But Erin had already chosen his side. For the first time in centuries, a human stood beside a dragon instead of against one. And that day, a new legend was born. Not of a dragon slayer, but of the first human who chose dragons over his own kind. If the creature who raised you was the same one your people wanted destroyed, who would you choose? Your world or your family? After he drops the sword, the moment Erin dropped his sword, the world around him changed. The soldiers behind him hesitated. No one moved, because no one had ever seen a dragon hunter refuse an order. The commander stepped forward. "Traitor," he said quietly, and without waiting, he gave the signal. Arrows filled the sky. The dragon roared, not in anger, but in pain. Erin turned instantly. Stop! But it was too late. One arrow struck deep into the dragon's wing. Without thinking, Erin ran forward, not away from the dragon, but toward it. He stood between the soldiers and the creature that raised him. The same soldiers he once led. The same men who once trusted him, now aiming their weapons at his back. In that moment, Erin understood something terrifying. The kingdom never wanted control. They wanted extinction. Every hunt, every mission, every order. It was never about balance. It was about wiping dragons from the world. The dragon lowered its head slowly. Despite the pain, despite the arrows, it didn't attack. It didn't run. It simply looked at Erin, the same way it had on the first night in the snow, and Erin made his final choice. "Go," he whispered. But the dragon didn't move, because this time it wasn't protecting him. It was waiting for him. The ground shook as more soldiers advanced, weapons raised. No hesitation now, so Erin did something no human had ever done. He stepped closer, placed his hand against the dragon's scales, and climbed onto its back. For a single second, the world stood still. Then the dragon spread its wings. Massive, ancient, unstoppable, and with one powerful motion, they rose into the sky. Arrows chased them, but none could reach, because, for the first time, a human and a dragon were not enemies, they were one. Below them, the soldiers watched in silence. The commander lowered his weapon, not in defeat, but in realization. This was no longer a hunt. This was the beginning of something far more dangerous. News spread across kingdoms. A human riding a dragon, not controlling it, not enslaving it, but flying with it. Some called it betrayal, others called it impossible. But one thing was certain: the age of dragon hunters was coming to an end. High above the mountains, the dragon slowed, and for the first time in years, it let out a low, peaceful breath. Erin closed his eyes, not as a hunter, not as a soldier, but as the child who once survived a storm under those same wings. But now, imagine this. If protecting the one who saved you meant becoming the enemy of your entire world, would you still make the same choice?